Hello and welcome to the Leadership Spotlight. In this series, I engage with thought leaders to discuss topics spanning from business, leadership, career advice, and everything in between. Our next speaker needs no introduction, particularly in the Akamai circles, but for those of you that don't know him, I'm going to provide a short one. George is an executive advisor, board member of the Akamai Foundation, and the former chairman of the board and chief executive officer of Akamai Technologies. Prior to Akamai, George served as CEO of BBN Technologies. Before joining BBN, he spent 31 years at IBM, running its US and Asia Pacific businesses and heading 2 manufacturing and development groups. George currently serves on the board of directors of Oracle Corporation. He has also served on the board of Ironwood Pharmaceuticals and Harley-Davidson. On a personal note, George has become an incredible advisor, mentor, and friend to me. And it is my pleasure to share a small piece of his wisdom with all of you today. George, welcome.
Thank you very much, Kim. That was very nice introduction. I'm always delighted to be with you. So I'm ready to go. Fire away.
Well, I am delighted as well, and I'm going to kick off with our first question. It's a bit of a hard one. George, as a board member, former CEO, and tech exec, you have such a unique and comprehensive purview on business. In these turbulent macroeconomic times, what advice do you have for organizations trying to navigate through this uncertainty?
Well, we certainly are in a world of uncertainty. And add to that the world of high tech, which is always fast paced and turbulent. I think an organization has to have certain fundamentals if it's going to really thrive in the kind of environment we face today. For one thing, I think you have to have strong executive leadership. I think all would agree with that, but that includes a tone at the top that where the employees understand that the company is going to live by some clear values. I think it's been proven that if the employees don't have that kind of confidence in their leadership and the company that they're working for, you don't really get all hands on deck to thrive in difficult times. Clear purpose is really important, a focus on a strategic direction. For years, since the beginning, 24 years, Akamai's fundamental mission has been to make the internet fast, reliable, and secure. And frankly, Kim, thanks to your leadership, we've expanded that to Akamai's purpose to make life better for billions of people, billions of times a day. Now that brings in certainly the customer, the end user, which is an important broadening of the reason we make the internet fast, reliable, and secure. So I think that's one thing, a clear purpose supported by a clear mission. I also think you have to have audacious goals, and those have to be communicated frequently in all corners of the business and concisely. And I think an important part of that is listening for feedback. What people think about the achievability of those goals or the challenge of those goals or ways to achieve those goals, which is important because you always have another turn at the bat, so to speak, as a leadership team to understand the challenge and the achievability of the goals that you've set, but they should be audacious. Nobody wants to work for goals that are a laydown. I think another aspect of this, of course, is executing as a team. Everybody understands that, but also to hold people accountable for their role and responsibility on the team and with one another. Early on in Akamai, we started a commitment process. We brought with the new company, we had executives from different backgrounds and experiences in other companies, and it was important to get them all on the same page. So we created a quarterly commitment process, which was for the top leadership team, the C-suite, if you will. And what they we're required to do is present to their fellow members a commitment. I will achieve such and such by a certain date, and I am dependent on so and so. Now, the interesting thing about that is so and so is also in the room, and that was not necessarily on their list, but it got people understanding what each role and responsibility for that quarter was to be. And then, of course, at the end of the quarter, we review them red, yellow, green. The important thing then was to understand the reds. Why weren't these commitments achieved? And that's the learning process, because you could have had a bad assumption. You could have had a failure. You could have had lack of teamwork. You could have misunderstood the challenge of a particular commitment. But you learn the how that way. How are we doing at going after these goals? And so executing as a team is important. What works, what doesn't work, and of course to fail fast. Let's get that fixed. And finally on this subject, I think agility is important in these turbulent times. Everybody talks about that, but ways to achieve that are moving decision making as close to the customer as possible, to delegate, and then have managers coach as they observe and participate in making decisions. And I think managers as a coach close to where the action is important. Not to get too much into world affairs, but I think it's pretty clear that the Ukrainian army understands delegation and the Russians don't. And you can see how agile they are when you let the leadership close to the front lines make a lot of the decision. Everybody learns from that, and then you continue on.
That's fantastic, George. I mean, what great advice for people, have strong leadership, clear and concise communications, commit and align as a team, innovate and fast fail, staying agile. And I just, those are such tangible things I think our audience can walk away from. Thank you for that. All right, I'm going to ask you an Akamai specific question. Since you have
Sure.
spent such an important part of your career as CEO at Akamai, and then as chairman of the board, what do you value most about Akamai?
Just crazy about the business, 24 years of it, love it, but it has some fundamental great things about it. One of them is the culture. It is a great place to work. It has great people. They work hard and they add value to the job and to one another. There's a great purpose, as I just mentioned, making life better for billions of people, billions of times a day. And we have a great business model, which is a service. It's recurring revenue. And recurring revenue has some distinct advantages, one of which is that it's sticky revenue with customers, and it can be highly profitable. So I think the fundamentals at Akamai were and are still intact, but it all gets down to the people and the people's willingness to work hard, to make their commitments, and to help one another. And you see that in our surveys about helping one another. And I think that makes it a great culture and a great place to work. Very proud of that.
Yeah, well, as a proud Akamai employee, I couldn't agree with you more. We spend more time with the people we work with often than our family and friends. So culture and working with people of integrity that are incredibly smart is so important. What career advice do you have for all the people listening right now?
Yeah, this is an important subject because, we experience the great resignation and people thinking they're moving on to greener pastures, that type of thing. And yet, certainly money, compensation is a major part of that these days, but also is a the career opportunity, and having the right culture. But when it comes to career opportunity, I think first of all, as an employee, you have to do your job. You have to really get involved, understand your role and responsibility. Performance sells. It really when you when you feel accountable and you work hard at your job and improve at your job, you're learning really a lot. You may not even realize it, but about how the company actually operates. And if you're a first line employee, you really can begin to understand how the company operates. And that's so important because if you love your industry, if you love the company that you're in, and you love your job and your fellow employees, then you can begin to think about your career and to what do you aspire? What is it that will contribute to your self-actualization? What role, what responsibility would you like to shoot for or achieve, or responsibilities? And then I think it's very important that you think about certain of them, like, do you want to be a manager? Being a manager is one of the best jobs ever, at first line all the way to CEO. Do you want to be a functional leader? Do you want to be a C-suite executive? Do you want to be a subject matter expert? What are the skills and experiences you need to reach these positions that you aspire to? Then I say, write it down, rewrite it, and think through what skills and experiences would you need to achieve that kind of job, and talk to people about it in the kinds of jobs that you're interested in. What about their career? How did they get to where they are? What experiences and skills did they acquire along the way? And I think that kind of a game plan is important to have, that you've thought through. And then, very importantly, work with your manager on this. Today's managers really appreciate a thoughtful discussion where the employee has made a plan and has reasons for why they want to get to where they want to be, and have been thoughtful about what skills and experiences they might need, so that the manager can help them with that. It won't have milestones. This is the kind of plan that doesn't happen overnight. No manager that you went to for advice and counsel can make your career steps that you're looking for happen overnight. But it is a good idea to have that understanding with the manager, with the milestones and some idea of a timeline. And then it's all very important to have periodic review. The manager that you're talking to then will really understand how serious you are about your aspirations, and they can help work, as others in the business can, on getting you to where you want to be. One of the things that some people do is they'll in fact, I did it in my career when I was early on as a manager. I realized I didn't have a really good financial understanding. I was physics and math, but I wasn't finance. And so I got a part-time MBA on the side, and that really helped me understand, the P&L, the balance sheet, financing of a business. And I think that helped me as a manager. I don't think the title helped me any. I don't think anybody cared whether I'd gotten an MBA or not. It's how you're performing. But I do think that the information I acquired by this part-time MBA was a big help to me. So, the other thing I might say is that it really helps to belong to a company that's growing. Careers are interesting. If the company is growing and the tree structure of possibilities are growing because you're expanding in the product lines, you're going international, that kind of thing, that just opens up additional opportunities for people. And so I think being with a company that's growing. Now, right now, in this economy, a lot of companies, tech companies, have really stopped hiring. They're backfilling maybe, but they're not growing. So it's a little bit of a challenge if to fill in some of these potential spots that would be there in a growing organization. But life's a sine curve. This will come back. Your company will start to grow again, and there'll be opportunities for those who have thought about it, who aspire to it, plan for it, and get the right skills and experiences to get there.
That's great, George. It's such wise and actionable advice you just gave. And, I love the idea of what you talked about, kind of owning your career,
Oh
taking the
yeah.
driver's seat as part of it. And, it never hurts to hook yourself to a rocket ship of a company, right? Because as the company grows, if you own your career and all the things you talked about, your growth will advance along
Yeah,
with the companies.
and let me just emphasize what you just said. You're responsible for your career.
Yeah.
The company is really not responsible for your career. They may think you're doing a great job and like to have you in another job, and that's good. That'd be good fortune. But you really want to be have intention about your career. Be purposeful about your career, and it always helps to have management understand what you're trying to achieve as an employee.
For sure, for sure. All right, George, I want to turn this back to you. Now I want to hear more about you. How did you approach your own career?
Well, I have been a very fortunate person because I graduated from college in 1961 and had some courses in early computers. They even had vacuum tubes instead of transistors. But what I didn't realize at the time was it was the next big thing because then in the early 60s, I joined IBM in 1961. The business explosion of the transistorized computer. Computers were in demand, the economy was booming, and transistorized computers were cheaper, better, faster than any vacuum tube devices available. And I rode that wave at IBM for 31 years. I stayed with IBM because I thought it was a great company, had great values. There was opportunity, and it was growing. So I participated in various jobs in different parts of IBM and different parts of the world, and it was a great experience. And so I learned a lot. Then I got into my mid 50s and realized I had, as a senior vice president, I'd probably reached the peak of where I might be, but I wasn't ready to retire, although that's what I did. I retired from IBM after 31 years and then started to look around at what is the next big thing. I was so lucky to have found the computer, hardware and software. Well, the next big thing about this time, which was 1992, 1993, was the beginning of the burgeoning of the internet, and realize, you know what, that is the next big thing, the internet. And so I began to look for that, and I was fortunate enough to be asked by Bolt, Beranek and Newman, a company that actually helped to get the internet started in 1969. They held the contract to build the devices for the ARPANET, a 4-node internet-like network. That was the beginning of it. So BBN was steeped in internet technology, and I got there in 1994. So I really wasn't part of the origins of that, but the company was filled with internet knowledge and experience, and they wanted to commercialize that. And so we created an ISP, Internet Service Provider. We were one of the top three when GTE came along and acquired us because they wanted an internet play. So that was fascinating for me to learn so much about the internet. It wasn't hardware, it wasn't software, it wasn't devices, it was services, it was internet service. So after being acquired, I became a venture capitalist with Polaris Venture Partners, who asked me to join them and help them work with their portfolio companies. I was about 60 at the time. And it was really a thrill the day that the professor and the graduate student from MIT came calling, looking for funding. And they had this brilliant idea to make the internet feasible for business. This was in 1998, when the internet was really starting to become useful for business as opposed to its origins of academic and research work. And but the internet wasn't fast, and it wasn't reliable, and it wasn't secure. And so it wasn't really feasible for business yet, but they had an idea how to make it so, and it became Akamai. And here we go now. The next big thing was making the internet fast, reliable, and secure, right in the face of the dot-com boom. Lucky again, it was the next big thing, and here's the dot-com boom, and so many companies needed Akamai's services. So it helps, to dream and scheme. I had thought along the way, especially when I was at BBN, that wouldn't it be great to be the head of a company that was network service based? BBN had a lot of different technologies, and we had the ISP, but wouldn't it be great if the whole company was just focused on providing its value over a network, the internet, instead of hardware and software per se, but through services? And here we go again. That's exactly the way Akamai started and the way it is today.
Wow, George, not only did you have a colored and robust career, but you had some incredible foresight, getting on the cusp of some, major industry trends that certainly formed the world today. That
Well, good
is
luck. I
fascinating.
had good luck, actually. There's a book called The Outliers that had a lot to do with right place, right time. And that happened actually two or three times in my career. Just the next big thing, was important. Today, I think people would think about healthcare and all the automation that's coming to the fore in healthcare. They would think about artificial intelligence. They'd think about big data and mining it, things like that. Those are the next, big things that are underway right now.
For sure. I still think it was more than luck, but all right. I'm gonna wrap us with a question because obviously you're a leader I admire, but I want to know what leaders do you admire and why?
Well, there are a number of leaders that you could read about, but you could go back to people like Eisenhower, uh, for example, Truman, some of the other U.S. presidents. But I think it's important to have worked with them so that you know them, and so I'm thinking of three. Uh, the first one would be when I was mid-career at IBM, offered the opportunity to be the executive assistant. Now, some people said you were the bag carrier, but I didn't mind that, to the chairman and the CEO of IBM. And I did that for 2 years, and we traveled the world, and I sat in all the management meetings, and I never had such exposure
Yeah.
to how a company like IBM operates and the people who are operating it. But the one thing I noticed about the chairman was what I'm about to tell you about a couple other people that have the same characteristic. So the next one is I've been on the Oracle board for 12 years, and another person whom I admire is Larry Ellison. And finally, I've worked closely with Tom Layton for 24 years. And but they have all three: the chairman, CEO of IBM, fellow by the name of Frank Carey, Larry Ellison, Tom Layton. They all have similar characteristics. They have very different personalities, but similar characteristics, and you know, they're brilliant, scary smart people, naturally smart, but they use that intelligence to listen closely, listen uh, hard, always processing, always trying to learn without bias. What new news here? What discontinuity am I about to learn about? What facts? What figures? They'll turn on a dime with new information if it affects the direction they've been following. Uh, and they're also on that point, they're very strategically oriented. Where do we want to go and why do we want to go there? That helps them set these audacious goals. And so when they're in meetings with people who are supposed to know what they're talking about, they are processing from a learning perspective. What am I learning here? How does that fit the model I have in my mind? How do I adjust the model I have in my mind? And it's amazing to watch somebody without they may have a form of preconceived notion, but a willingness to change that notion on new news, new facts, and trust in the people who are bringing that information to the fore. The other characteristic is for someone that's scary, smart, processing, listening hard, making you nervous when you're presenting to them, is they're very empathetic and caring people. It's kind of a big surprise. But one thing that attribute, being empathetic and caring, is it creates followership. It's the most amazing thing. And all these three that I just mentioned, I've seen it. Scary, smart, listen intently, change direction on a dime. But the people realize that they really care for them. And they care for the company, they care for them, they care for their careers. How are you doing? It's not just a casual question. They know about your family. They know about your interests. They like to chat about that, in quiet time, so to speak. And it really creates followership. People really want to work for them. They don't want to let them down. They want them to really perform.
Well, there was a lot to unpack there. You certainly picked some incredible leaders. I can attest to Tom having the privilege to work for him directly, and I
Oh,
loved how you characterized those strengths and skill sets, particularly the consummate learner. I think that's
yeah,
something we all
you
should
know,
aspire to be.
I was I was the first CEO, and then I was followed by a terrific fellow, Paul Sagan, who became the second CEO. And then Paul decided to, after 6 or 8 years, 8 years maybe, to step aside and just be on the board. And so Tom became the third CEO. Now, the only difference of opinion Paul Sagan and I have with each other is who was the second best CEO. Tom Layton is just terrific. He's really something.
He sure is. Well, George, all I can say is, wow, I can't thank you enough for your time and your wisdom today. I personally walked away with some true gems of advice and learnings, as always, every time I chat with you. And to all our listeners out there, I just want to thank you for the privilege of your time.
Oh, I enjoyed being with you, Kim. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.